firefighters were just drowning in this stuff. And Ed was insisting on getting a study to look out for firefighters and others on protecting toxics. And, Colorado was a state that decriminalized cannabis, but that doesn't work if you don't have a banking system that makes sense. So he has been there at the federal level, relentlessly pursuing all kinds of different issues that are very real, rooted in Colorado here, including banking and finance reforms. So I'm just going to turn it right on over to Ed Perlmutter, our congressman from the 7th Congressional District. And go, Ed. Happy 4th day of convention.
Good morning. Thank you. No cartwheels this morning. And I'll tell that story real quick. I was running against Joe Coors a number of years ago. And I had done, one of my daughters is a cheerleader, a gymnast, all that sort of stuff. And she was doing backflips and triple lisses and all that stuff. And we're in the Commerce City Parade. And they say to me, well, okay, Ed, we've seen your daughter do all this stuff. What about you? I said, well, I can do cartwheels. So I do 3 cartwheels. They put it on their Channel 8. And the next thing I know, somebody calls me up and says, look, we saw this guy. They said it was you doing cartwheels and that Nancy Pelosi told you to do cartwheels and you'll do anything, she says. I said, well, when there was a Joe Coors ad and trying to, make me out to be a puppet. And I said, well, and they said, and they morphed your face onto this guy doing cartwheels. I said, no, I really did do those cartwheels. And I've done cartwheels every election and in that parade, particularly since then, but on election night, just as part of a celebration of things. So I'm not doing any cartwheels today, but on November 3rd, when we win up and down the ticket, you guys will see 3 more cartwheels. And that'll probably be my last cartwheels ever. Okay. So I'm not as loose as I used to be. So I just want to start by thanking Halisi and Morgan. I want to thank you guys for organizing this, for connecting all of this, for providing a platform that I can navigate without screwing it up. Just really appreciate your willingness to do this because I've been to a number of conventions and I'm a very extrovertish guy. And this pandemic really, takes its toll on somebody who's an extrovert because I like to be with people. I like to build relationships. I like to renew friendships and gain new friendships. And so by providing this forum, this platform, you've allowed some of that to happen. And, I got to participate in the 2008 convention. I spoke at that convention in our Mile High Stadium. And, I think that's the greatest convention that will ever be held. We did such a good job. But this one has been very effective for me. I think this is the second best one I've been to just because it's fast paced. It's direct. There's a story being told, and it's sweeping in the breadth of people who can participate. And so when you get a chance, I think I'll be off the call before Tom Perez gets on, but I think he's going to be one of the guests maybe this morning. Would you please give him my compliments of how this has been prepared and choreographed? And for somebody like me, I like to cheer. I like to applaud. I like to do all that stuff. And I miss that. Other people like to heckle. That's their thing. They get to miss that. But overall, the story is well told about what we've got to do, why we've got to do it, and when we got to get it done. The next 75 days is going to be a struggle. I mean, this is about power. This is about who has the power in America. And as Democrats, we don't like to talk about power very much, but this is about power. And Donald Trump has it, and he abuses it. He has used it for his own benefit. He takes it out on people he doesn't like. Things that we always took for granted are at risk and have been at risk since he was elected. So this is, the post office. We take the post office for granted, for God's sakes. And he's doing what he can to make it difficult because he wants to keep power. All right. So we've heard warnings from the Obamas. Their speeches were phenomenal. We've seen, people crossing aisles from Chuck Hagel and Kasich and Colin Powell. The issue is clear for us. And the next 75 days has got to be totally focused on us electing Democrats up and down the ticket. I'd say that the two people that I've loved all the speeches. I don't watch much TV. I have been just glued to these programs. But there was the young woman, and we mentioned it on the calls before, down in Arizona, who said that, the only pre-existing condition her father had was trusting Donald Trump. The other person who I thought was just off the charts was the elevator operator, who talked about Joe Biden getting on the elevator and befriending, becoming a friend like that. It was so real and so earnest. And I think that's what we're going to get in this president when we elect him. So I told you on Monday, I've got sort of three platitudes that are defining what I want to see happen over the next 75 days. And to remember, one is, now is the time for all good men and women to come to the aid of their country. And I don't think we've had a time, not since I've been alive, like this. So now is the time that all good men and women come to the aid of their country. The second, I mentioned it the other day, and we're so fortunate to live in Colorado. 'Tis a privilege to live in Colorado. And it really is. I was with my mother, my sister, and two of my daughters yesterday, late afternoon in Evergreen, surrounded by 50 elk. We couldn't get away from these guys. And our state is so beautiful and so wonderful. And I see the poster of the Green New Deal. We've got to do so much to protect our environment, or we will have these fires that will consume our wonderful state. The last thing, and you've heard it from a couple speakers, is vote like your life depended upon it, because it does. And not to scare anybody, but we've seen what incompetence and malevolence does. And it's not good. It's not pretty. And we all know this. And I know I'm preaching to the choir, but the next 75 days are going to be a fist fight. And our job in a very uncertain time in terms of campaigning and working is to get out everybody we can. And we've got to win by a lot, because if we don't win by a lot, they're going to be pulling shenanigans. And that's what we've got to do. So I think we're going to just crush these people, but we've got to make that happen. And it's because the party has been so effective. We're going to do that. We've got a guy coming up after me. I guess Phil Weiser is speaking after me, who, to win the Attorney General's office is so key, because he's been able to bring to bear the law, which Trump just ignores or flaunts. And so we've got a guy who is in that position. Jared Polis as our governor, Jenna Griswold as our Secretary of State, Dave Young is our treasurer. We've got a team at the top that makes Colorado just great. And Phil Weiser is one of the best lawyers anybody could ever have as their Attorney General. So I just thank you, Morgan. I thank you, Halisi, for putting all of this together. I think the Democratic ticket, if we do what we know how to do, we are going to win everything. And then we're going to be able to implement and enact some of the policies that we know will be good for everyday Americans. And that's really what the Democratic Party stands for, is everyday Americans and their wishes and desires. And I'm going to turn it back to Morgan. I think Phil Watt is going to be an awesome speaker for all of us. And I'm just happy he's our Attorney General.
Ed, we love you. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I'm going to jump right into
cartwheels next.
Virtual cartwheels. So I think we can all guess who's been the one to sue to defend the ACA, our clean air rules, going after people evading interest rate caps, doing serious reports on problems of sexual abuse among the clergy. He sued and won to defend democracy on the faithless electors case for the presidential electors. So much more. But in the interest of time, I'm just going to turn it right on over to Colorado's Attorney General, Phil Weiser. I think I am.
Okay. Am I here now?
Yes. Good morning.
Good morning, everybody. And boy, Ed, you're amazing. I have to say, we are all blessed to have Ed Perlmutter as a model of what politics looks like. Politics needs to be elevating. It needs to be engaging. People need to have fun doing it, and people need to understand the purpose, which is how much it matters that we're all engaged in this work together. And like Ed, I miss all of you. I really do. I'm also very extroverted. It's not the same when we're, on Zoom, but we're making the best of it. We've been innovative. We've got a lot of work to do. So I'll start with what Ed was saying. Morgan reached out to me this week and said, what are we going to do about this post office? I'm like, we're on the case. And literally an hour after we bring the case, they start backing down. But that's not good enough that we're getting these statements. We want binding legal oversight to protect our right to vote. And I won't settle for anything less. And as Morgan said, last election, 78% or so of Coloradans called for this 36% cap. So we don't have predatory payday lending. We just did a nationwide enforcement. It's a big deal that some companies were trying to lend above our caps, and we're going to enforce our caps to protect people. We're also committed to protecting our land, air, and water. Ed's point's right. We are living in a dangerous time, and we in Colorado see it. We feel it. The less natural snowpack we have, the less water we have. There's so many reasons we've got to win this election. What I want to emphasize is it's got to be up and down the ballot. The rule of law, justice, our way of life is something that, again, it matters. County commission races. We've got counties right now where they're not interested in enforcing basic mask requirements that we know from data and science matters. We've got issues around criminal justice reform, ending cash bail. That depends on district attorneys. We can work together and make this an historic year, but it's going to require all of us doing our part. And I'm so appreciative for how many people all across our state are stepping up and doing whatever we can. We need to do this work together. I'm going to be doing all the work I can with respect to district attorneys races all across the state. If you all want to get involved, you're all probably super duper involved, but happy to get people more involved. We've got lots of work to do. We're going to turn some seats we've never turned before this season. And it's because of our engagement. And I'll be working with state AGs all across the country to protect our democracy, to stand up for the rule of law, because Ed's right. This post office is not the last crazy thing we're going to see in this election season. There needs to be constant vigilance here, and we've got to be working really hard together. We've got a great team for democracy, and Morgan and Halisi, I am so appreciative for your leadership. You guys are both amazing. We've got to keep doing this work. Thank you. And like Ed said, I'm fired up and ready to go by this convention. This is really powerful. We've got a lot of opportunities. We've got to stay engaged. We can't take our foot off the gas. So thank you, everybody. It's a pleasure to be with you. I'm happy to turn over. I know you've got some great guests coming up, so enjoy.
Wow. And every day in office have shown us why it matters who we elected as Attorney General. Thank you so much for defending everything that needs to be defended at this very tough moment, and for joining us this morning, Phil. I'm going to move right into introducing our next speaker, and so I will let you know a little bit about him. So before there was Mayor Pete, there was Mayor David, Congressman David Cicilline from Rhode Island's 1st Congressional District. He early was a founding member of the Mayors Against Illegal Guns and had previous local government experience, also serving in the state legislature of Rhode Island. Right now, he's chairing a House subcommittee on antitrust at a time where consolidation of corporate ownership is at the heart of weaker consumer protections and an income and wealth gap in America. He's been plugged into serious foreign policy and foreign affairs conversations for Europe, Eurasia, Middle East, and North Africa, which probably made it extra alarming for him as he started to see the strange invitations from our president to have foreign countries interfere in our elections. He was front and center on investigating the corruption of Donald J. Trump. And without further ado, I would like to have us help welcome the congressman from the 1st District of Rhode Island, Congressman Cicilline. Yay!
Thank you so much, Morgan and Halisi, for the invitation. It's great to see all of you. Thank you all for being delegates. And I want to first say it is such a privilege to serve with your great Colorado delegation in the House. Ed Perlmutter was happy to hear him this morning. Jason Crow, the rising star, Jonah Goose, and of course, Diana DeGette. So thank you for sending such great colleagues, people who make a difference every day, not only in the life of Coloradans, but in the life of our country. So I really appreciate that. I also want to say your Attorney General, Phil Weiser, is a star as well. We had a field hearing in connection with our antitrust hearing investigation in Colorado and had an opportunity to meet with and remain in contact with your Attorney General, who's really leading the way on this platform dominance in the digital marketplace and among many other things. So it's great to see General Weiser. And again, thank you for your extraordinary leadership. I'm excited to be with you during our convention. I think the first 3 nights have been magnificent. And I think, the speakers have really underscored it, what you all know. This is a critically important election. It's clearly the most important election in modern times, in the lifetime of everyone on this Zoom. The new president of our country and vice president will inherit a severe economic crisis, a healthcare crisis, a reckoning on the issue of racial justice, and a crisis with respect to international leadership by the United States on many issues around the world. And so these are hard times, but we have seen that this president and this administration had corrupted the office of the presidency and abused the power of his office in so many ways throughout the last 3.5 years to undermine the core values and the founding principles of this country. And we see most recently his effort to basically sabotage the post office, one of the most venerated American institutions in our Constitution. One of the things that basically took the 13 colonies and knitted us together as a country so that we could communicate with each other and serve such a central role in communities all across America. And he's even tried to degrade and destroy that because he sees it as an impediment to his reelection. So look, this is a president who we know has sought and accepted foreign interference to win. He is prepared to cheat and try to steal this election. And I think what President Obama reminded us is, this is a democracy worth fighting for. One of the things that this convention, I think, has done is reminded all of us what is so great about this country. Because, in the last 3.5 years, sometimes it's easy to forget. It's been so ugly, so divisive. The president has tried to shred the institutions that have made America the envy of the world, a free press, independent judiciary, the rule of law. And I think our convention has not only lifted up, our great candidate for president, Joe Biden, our extraordinary candidate for vice president, Senator Kamala Harris, but it's also reminded us through the voices of ordinary Americans what has made this country the great and special place it is, the diversity, the people who come from all over the world to make a better life here, and the things that are happening all across America to reclaim our democracy. But it's a reminder that we're in for a big fight. This is not going to be easy. And so I'm here to say thank you for what you have done, what you will do to make sure that we are victorious in November. As Congressman Perlmutter said, we have to behave as if our lives and our democracy depends on it, because it does. That is not hyperbole. If you look at the last 4 years and think of the destruction and the damage that President Trump has done to this country and to our standing in the world, imagine what he would behave like if he feels vindicated and emboldened because he's reelected and doesn't face the prospect of having to face reelection. We haven't seen anything yet. And so thank you for what you've done. Thank you for what you will do. Your state is obviously really important because you're going to send my former mayoral colleague, Mayor Hickenlooper, to the Senate and give us Democratic control of the Senate. You're going to help us elect Joe Biden and Kamala Harris as our president and vice president. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. Not to increase the pressure on you, but our democracy is counting on the state of Colorado to deliver. I know you will. Thank you so much for including me today. It's a great pleasure to be with you.
Congressman, it's great to see you again. And thank you for adopting Colorado.
My pleasure.
But he's right. We're a battleground state, and everything we're watching on the convention, there is no way we can get to the policies we have to do for this country if we do not get Biden as president and flip that Senate. And I'm sure you wouldn't mind if we grew the majority in the House a little bit too.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're trying to do that with the 3rd Congressional District and potentially others here in Colorado, as well as sending Jason Crow back for you. So thank you for holding Trump accountable. Thank you. We know he keeps an enemies list, and you're probably on it. So
yes, hopefully that's a badge of honor.
Yeah.
Thanks again.
Great to see you. Thank you for joining us. So speaking of flipping the Senate, Senator Michael Bennet wanted to be with us today, but there are governing responsibilities to these jobs too. So I think you guys will be happy to know that he's in the San Luis Valley, but did want to send a message to us this morning. And as Felice mentioned earlier, if you had headphones, I think the sounds might work a little bit better. But let's hear from Senator Michael Bennet. I don't hear anything.
I'm not hearing audio.
Yeah.
It worked perfectly yesterday when we tested it. Of course it did.
I was muted, everybody. Sorry about that.
That's the catch-22. It works in testing.
We'll try that again.
Colorado delegates, I'm so grateful to represent our wonderful state, and even more grateful that all of you are representing us at this year's Democratic National Convention. In the face of overwhelming obstacles, to say the least, our party has pulled together one of our largest conventions yet. Instead of taking place in one city, it's occurring in communities all across the country, including right here in our home state. In Colorado, the majority of people agree on what needs to be done to make progress. Expand healthcare and make it universal. Tackle climate change and build an economy that works for everyone. And they know President Trump fundamentally disagrees with the very principles of our democracy. Trump's latest attacks on the Postal Service and mail-in ballots are the actions of a tyrant, not a leader of, by, and for the people. In Colorado, where we have one of the strongest vote-by-mail systems in the country, we know better. And we have a chance to make real and lasting change this November. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. We need a president in the White House who you don't have to think about for 2 weeks at a time, who doesn't put lives in danger with every whim he has on Twitter. So in the middle of a pandemic and economic turmoil, you have the security you need to raise your kids, build your businesses, and live your lives. That president is Joe Biden. It's not even close. As Joe says, this is a fight for the soul of our nation. It's a fight for a more fair, more democratic, and more just society, for responsible leadership amidst the greatest public health crisis in a century, for creating jobs, reforming our criminal justice system, and ensuring every child in America receives a high-quality education. And right by Joe's side in this fight is Kamala Harris, whom I've had the privilege of serving with in the Senate. Kamala has spent her career standing up for the people who need it most, and that's exactly what she'll do as our vice president. Just as important as winning back the White House is putting Mitch McConnell out of a job and flipping the Senate. Fortunately, the path to doing that runs right through Colorado, with the election of my good friend and a true public servant, John Hickenlooper. So delegates, we have a role to play as leaders within the Democratic Party this week, but also in our own communities between now and November. With more unaffiliated voters in our state than ever before, we have a chance to build a broad coalition going into the most important election of our lifetime. Our job is to make sure every eligible person is registered to vote, and every registered person actually casts their vote by Election Day. Our job is to defeat Cory Gardner and elect John Hickenlooper to the U.S. Senate, and to build on the work you all did in 2018 to elect progressive candidates up and down the ballot and expand our majorities in the House of Representatives and Colorado legislature. We need to do that again. Finally, our job is to unify and rally behind Joe Biden and Kamala Harris as they build energy and momentum across the nation. If we do this, not only will we win, we'll start to govern again, and build the future our children need and deserve. Before I go, I want to leave you with just this thought. Imagine having Joe Biden in the White House, a majority in the Colorado legislature, and 2 Democratic senators from Colorado, 2 from Arizona, 2 from Nevada, 2 from New Mexico, and 2 from Montana, all across the Rocky Mountain West. Imagine the kind of change we could start to make from this region of the country. And over the next few months, we got to get to work to make sure this is a reality. I'll be right there alongside you. Thanks, and see you soon.
Thank you so much. It's good to be joined, even if virtually, by our Senator Michael Bennet, who knows what it takes to flip a U.S. Senate seat in a tough state. People think we're bluer than we are. So let's send some reinforcements in to Senator Bennet and get us a majority. I'm going to introduce our next speaker coming up, and I think we all know him. So when Tom Perez was Assistant Attorney General for the Civil Rights under Obama, he was the one who instigated the independent investigation when Trayvon Martin was murdered in Florida in 2012. When Tom was on Montgomery City Council, he opposed the privatization of a nonprofit health carrier. As Secretary of Labor in Maryland, he took on employee systematic misclassification as a pattern to skirt rights and benefits to workers. He worked to pass living wage laws in Maryland. An Assistant Attorney General under Obama, he worked to enforce the Americans with Disabilities Act and was responsible for implementing the Matthew Shepard and James Byrd Hate Crimes Prevention Act. And of course, he served as Secretary of the United States Department of Labor under President Obama. But we know Tom is the chair of the Democratic National Committee, not an easy job to have. Under his tenure, we have worked to address national party neutrality in presidential campaigns, address prior debt of the party, and build strong relationships with the state parties. It will be under his tenure that we make Donald Trump a one-term president. Please help us welcome DNC Chair Tom Perez.
Thank you, Chair Carol. Thank you, Morgan. It's great to see you. Great to see so many familiar faces. Congressman Perlmutter, good to see you, my friend. Thank you for all your help in Washington. Ed Perlmutter, he's one of these guys, if you don't like Ed Perlmutter, I think it's your fault. That's how I feel about it. And he's just one of those kind of guys. And Ed's roommate, a congressman from Connecticut, and Ed and I, we get together every so often to talk about what we can do. And Ed, you've been such a remarkably helpful person, and you speak truth to power, and really proud to call you a friend. Joe Neguse, I feel like he's a 10th term congressman because he came in and just hit the ground running in such a remarkable way. And I'm having flashbacks to 2018. We did a wonderful bus tour when Jared was running for governor, and he has hit the ground running as well. So much remarkable talent there in Colorado. And I have 3 kids, so I just want to tell you one story. My middle kid just graduated from the University of Wisconsin, and she just moved a month ago to Denver, and she's working at a criminal defense firm, and she's loving it. And she's living about 1.5 miles from where my wife and I used to live when we lived in Denver in the late 80s. So I showed her Don's Mixed Drinks, which was a bar we closed a number of nights on my way home to our apartment. And it was about 0.5 mile from our apartment, so we could get there and walk home. So we weren't doing anything irresponsible. But I showed her all the great sights of Denver, and it was great to be there. You have a remarkable state. You've made a lot of progress. And I think about some of the reactionary Republicans that were in office when I was around, and the progress that you've made in both the state house, the state senate, the governor's residence, Senator Bennet and the great work he's doing in the United States Senate. We will have Senator Hickenlooper, and I worked with him very closely when I was Labor Secretary. And you look at the remarkable accomplishments in Colorado. I think the unemployment rate was something like 2.9% when he left office. Remarkable progress, and I consider him a good friend, and I know he's going to win with your help. These are remarkable times. I'm here in Milwaukee. I wish you were here. And ordinarily, we'd all be doing this in person. I can look out my window there and see the arena we were supposed to be in. We are, unlike the other side, we pay attention to the public health. And the thing we did in the preparation for this convention is we saw this coming a few months ago because we saw the chronic incompetence of this president. And so we understood that while we are going to hope for the best in delaying the convention, we've got to prepare for every contingency. And people said that we couldn't get it done, but I think this has been an extraordinary week. It's been an unconventional convention, without a doubt, but it has been a remarkable convention. Our goal and our theme has been uniting America, not simply uniting the party, but uniting America. And our message has been clear. Whether you voted Democratic in the past or you didn't, you have a seat at the Democratic Party table. And the array of speakers we've seen is a tribute to that. And that's what Joe Biden wants to do. We need a uniter in chief. We need we need someone, we need a commander in chief. We don't need a tweeter in chief. We need someone who understands that we're at our best when we're working together, when we have each other's backs, not a knife in each other's back. And that's what Joe Biden is about. I hope you've gotten to know Joe Biden better this week. Even though he's been around for 50 years, I think there's a lot that people didn't know about him. His heart is bigger than the Rocky Mountains. His heart and his commitment to making sure that everyone has a fair shake is just something that's incomparable. He is such a decent human being, and he understands the plight of ordinary Americans. One of the things I loved about the roll call across America, aside from the colossal beauty of your picture in Colorado, was Scranton, Pennsylvania. You look at Bob Casey there, and you look behind him, and that was Joe Biden's house. Joe Biden wasn't born on third base. Joe Biden comes from humble roots. He earned everything he had. He was the poorest man in the United States Senate. Donald Trump was born on third base, and he'd have you believe he hit a triple. And that's the difference between the two. We have so much work to do between now and Election Day. I come to you with chronic optimism. We got 75 days till the weekend, 75 days till the most important election of our lifetime. And Morgan, you said something that resonated with me. There is the perception that, hey, Colorado's blue, we can move on. I understand that you've made tremendous progress because of everyone in this meeting and so many other people. But I also understand that progress can be fleeting and you can never take anything for granted. I really think you can win that 3rd congressional district race. And I talked to her shortly after her victory in the primary. Your opponent is, well, shall we say, interesting. I know we're going to win this Senate seat, and I see Governor Hickenlooper on the phone. On this call. Thank you so much, Governor, for your friendship. I know you're going to pull it out, and I can't wait to have you in Washington. But we can leave nothing to chance, which is why our coordinated campaign is obviously actively involved in Colorado. We're all in this together. We can win this together. And I would make one final ask of all of you. Every single day when you wake up between now and Election Day, and I tell my team it's 75 days till the weekend. Every single day you wake up, ask yourself the question, what can I do today to help Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, John Hickenlooper, my member of Congress, win? What can I do? And then when you go to bed, ask yourself, what did I do? Did I accomplish everything? Because, folks, we can do this. We can make history. I was in tears when I got the call that we're going to be announcing Kamala in a few hours. It just moved me to tears because as a civil rights lawyer, this is what it's all about. It's about shattering those glass ceilings and giving hope to every young woman in America that no matter your station in life, you can do anything. It is a remarkable moment, but I don't want it to be a footnote in history. I love Geraldine Ferraro and what she did, but we didn't make it across the finish line. This time we will, this time we must. And that's why we've invested more than ever before in building that infrastructure for success. I know we can win the presidency. I know we can take over the Senate. I want to see John Hickenlooper in Washington. I want to see Steve Bullock in Washington. I want to see so many other Democrats in Washington We're working also to flip state houses. You made that progress in Colorado. We want to do it elsewhere. And we want to do that because we know that this is redistricting time. And so that is why we're investing so much up and down the ballot. Thanks for what you're doing. Governor, thanks for stepping up in this Senate race. Everyone who's been running, thank you for what you're doing. Ed Perlmutter, thank you for the energy you bring. Some people after 20 years or something in a job, they might get a little stale. Ed Perlmutter sprints to the office every single day, and that's what he does. He is a fiery leader, and the passion that all of your electeds bring, Michael Bennett, all of them, the passion you bring for the job, the commitment to Colorado, the commitment to a safe, secure America in which we can all benefit. It is something that I have admired for some time, and we will take back America. Thanks for being the first responder, and thanks for having me, Morgan. Look forward to continuing our work.
Thank you for joining us and what you do. One quick question coming from our delegation is on vote totals from the committee reports. And I think, go ahead. Yeah, sure.
We had record turnout, 99.7% of the eligible voters voted. We had 4,747 delegates, 4,732 voted. And Biden, obviously overwhelming. The platform was adopted, overwhelming. I don't have the exact numbers, but it was like 3-1, something like that. Same thing with the Rules Committee.
My understanding is after an audit, those final numbers are released. Is that right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. And people, if they want, can request to look and see who voted for what. So
okay.
There's total transparency.
Mr. Chairman, thank you so much for everything you're doing in the moment where we need you to take back our country. And as a state party, I can say that commitment you've made to states is noticeable and appreciated and will get us over the finish line. Keep voting. Happy convention.
I want to second that, Chairman Perez. Thank you for all that you've done in revitalizing state parties. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. And thanks for all you're doing to make sure vote by mail works. You're a great model for the nation. Thank you, Jenna. And thank you, everybody working on that.
Everyone catches up. Thanks, Tom.
Take care.
So we've been talking about what we need in order to actually make progress on everything that we care about. That's even why we are Democrats, and we can't do that without flipping the Senate. You guys all know John Hickenlooper as our former governor from 2011 to 2018, and you also know him as Denver's mayor and, of course, as a brew pub owner. But we also know there's no path to flip the United Senate without electing John Hickenlooper. And we know that none of the policy measures can advance through the Senate without electing John Hickenlooper to flip that Senate. We know there's no way to reclaim the Constitution or justice at the Supreme Court or in our federal courts without electing John Hickenlooper. But I want to take a second to introduce you to the John Hickenlooper I know from having served with him in the state legislature. He was the governor that met with us weekly. John Hickenlooper brought historic transparency and accountability to each of Colorado's departments, audits, and put more of this government online than ever before. Under John Hickenlooper's watch, the John Hickenlooper I know passed and signed into law civil unions. He passed and signed into law our universal vote-by-mail system that is the envy of the country. He was the governor who signed into law Colorado's DREAM Act. And when the rest of us were getting death threats after the Aurora movie theater massacre, he was there with grieving families and was there to sign universal background checks and 15-round limits on gun safety reform. When we were in the last recession on the crisis with the foreclosure crisis, he was the governor that signed foreclosure reforms. And when we saw lenders misusing credit scores as a barrier to employment, Governor Hickenlooper was the one who signed the end of that practice into law. He began earnest, real reforms for criminal justice reform, including overworking our outdated, unjust, and unequitable drug laws in the state of Colorado. He signed campaign finance law into reform, historic expansion of solar and wind energy. He was the leader behind Colorado's clean air rules. Governor Hickenlooper is the person I know who signed the bill finally decriminalizing the victims of sex trafficking in Colorado. And when Colorado was a state among so many where women who had been victims of rape were legally forced to co-parent with their rapists when it resulted in the birth of a child, he signed the end of that practice. Under his watch, we reduced the Colorado prison population, moved to an evidence-based system. He signed foster care reforms in this state. When we finally had a Colorado version of an earned income tax credit, that was under the John Hickenlooper I know as governor of Colorado. And we were one of the first states under the Affordable Care Act to do the Medicaid expansion, bringing health care to over 700,000 uninsured Coloradans. Curious, fair, listener, problem solver, bridge builder. That's the John Hickenlooper I know. Please help me welcome our former governor, our candidate for United States Senate, who will defeat Cory Gardner and will be the person to help us flip the majority of the United States Senate, John Hickenlooper.
Thank you so much, Morgan and Halisi. Thank you for everyone who's on this call and all the work that's been done by the Colorado Democratic Party to really create a level of momentum. I also want to give a huge shout out to Ed Perlmutter. I agree that he is one of the most passionate people in the entire Congress and tireless in every single regard. I want to tell a couple quick stories. First, my 6 months when I was out there running around Iowa and New Hampshire and South Carolina, and I got a chance to meet Kamala Harris, in a more direct way. We kind of bumped into each other once, and we had some common friends, and there was we kind of hit it off. And then about 3 weeks later or 4 weeks later, we crossed paths in Des Moines in the convention center, and it was just like seeing an old friend. And we started jabbering away like kids, and I think one of her staff had a video of us just catching up. And what I saw there was someone who not only is brilliant, and I think she is super smart and just has an instinct for the details of policy, but also who people are and what people need. And it reflects a lifetime that she's dedicated to service. But she's also real. She is the real person who's asking and wants to know about your brother, if your sister's sick. She pays attention to the people around her and invests herself. And that is the mark of not only a great leader, but I think a great person. And I think you can say almost all the same things that people say about Joe Biden, that he is who he is. He's authentic. He's lived his life to serve others. Kamala Harris is going to be the perfect partner for him, not only in this campaign, but in the election. And I'm very excited about working with them and doing everything we can to make sure that we do our part. And we make sure that the Biden-Harris ticket doesn't just win in Colorado, but they win by a lot. Let me give you a quick view of how I look at our race and the other races. I loved when Tom Perez was talking about Dianne Bush and her chance to win the 3rd district, because she does have a great chance to win that district. She is fired up. She is determined. She is passionate. Everything I said about Ed Perlmutter, you can say about Dianne Bush. And when she was in the General Assembly, I just loved working with her. So we will see these campaigns unroll. And my focus is, obviously, I've got to win the Senate seat, and I have no illusions. We will run a day and night campaign. We've already got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of volunteers lined up, but we want to have the effort and the momentum so that we actually are a rising tide, and we make it so that Dianne can win, that Jason Crow doesn't have to work quite so hard to make sure he gets reelected, that we help make sure we have healthy majorities in the Senate, in the state Senate, and the state House as well. it's very exciting. It's very exciting for me to be part of this. I think what we really are seeing is a reflection of Colorado values and how Washington has just wandered completely away from those values, and that we are coming together in Colorado. And after my primary, I feel a rising tide of support. It's very, very exciting. One last thing about Tom Perez is when he was the Secretary of Transportation, we were doing a lot of transportation stuff. So we stayed in close touch. And as many of you know, I live in Park Hill, kind of between downtown and the airport. So whenever cabinet members would come out, I'd always invite them for dinner because they'd get the last flight out of Washington and they'd arrive at, in Denver at the airport at like 8 o'clock or 8:15. So I just, it'd be pretty simple, get a steak and a salad or something. But so Tom Perez has sat at my kitchen counter and we've had dinner together a couple of times. And again, he's as authentic a person as I've ever known. And his work, he talks about as being a labor lawyer. He really does recognize how infrastructure needs to be part of what binds this country together. It's not just bridges and roads. It's about healthcare and hospitals and a public safety or a public health infrastructure. It's about building schools and making sure our education systems are set up and fully funded. It's about, go down the list, housing and the infrastructure we need for housing. And I think that, let me finish with just a lot of what motivates me in this campaign. Most of you remember that when I first got elected governor in 2010, we were upside down economically. We went into 4 years with wildfires like what we're seeing now, probably even more burning at one time. Some of the worst wildfires in the state's history in terms of damage and loss of life. We had the worst flood in the state's history in 2013. We had the shooting in the Aurora movie theater in 2012. I went to 34 funerals in those first 4 years. And one thing I learned in my being, in my flesh and blood, was that when people have lost so much, you can't tell them you're going to build back what they had. It's not enough to compel them to invest themselves at the level that's necessary to rebuild after a natural disaster like we had faced. You have to convince people that you're going to rebuild better than it was before. You're going to rebuild better than what they had, more and better and more resilient than what they had before. That's what this country has to do after COVID-19 and the neglect and the neglect and the negligence of the White House and Washington that has resulted in our having one of the worst responses to COVID-19 of any of the industrialized nations in this country. We're going to have to go and build back better than was before. And certainly, as so many of us were home isolated and really together watched the murder of George Floyd and saw clearly the inequities. It wasn't just about police reform. When Black Lives Matter swept across this country, it was also about the inequity in so many parts of our society. The inequity in healthcare and the tolerance that we had for pre-existing conditions, and the inequity in access to healthcare that unfairly and disproportionately disadvantaged people of color and marginalized communities. The inequity in housing, the inequity in education and skills training, the inequity in opportunity. And I think this country has to seize the moment and the opportunity to rebuild better than we were before. And better means with more equity. And I think that's one of the things that excites me most about going to the U.S. Senate is being part of a group of people that come in. We make sure that Mitch McConnell is no longer the majority leader of the United States Senate. But we also begin this rebuilding process, not just of our economy, but of our infrastructure, and to make sure we rebuild better than we were before, and that improvement includes the inequity, that we address the inequity that we have had for generations, for centuries. And I appreciate everyone on this call has, in one way or another, committed themselves to that effort. to rebuild better than we were before. And my commitment to you is I'm working 70 and 75 hours a week, maybe 80 hours a week, some weeks. I'm not going to back off for a moment in this campaign. I guarantee you we're doing small, I call them tailgates, but we go and get, 8 or 10 or 12 people in a House district, and we kind of have a little a town hall meeting right there on the spot, socially distanced with masks. That effort's going to go all across the state, and hopefully we'll reach out to those of you on this call and make sure that you are part of this energy that we're really trying to build to make sure that Colorado is part of rebuilding this country better than it was before. So thank you all very much. And again, Morgan, thank you so much for your great leadership.
Yeah, it's great to see you. And thank you for taking on this role that matters so much for our state and the whole country. Everything is hinging on this. So we wish you the very best. We are here to get you over the finish line, and Colorado's job is to do it and do it decisively. So good luck on the campaign trail. We will see you there, and go get them. Go fight, win. Bye, Governor.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Our next guest is our state treasurer, and Dave Young was part of a historic sweep of wins in 2018 on winning those down to ballot races that we haven't always been able to win. He had previously been serving in Colorado's House District 50 in the Colorado legislature, and he knows what it's like to be winning and competing in a swing place surrounded by a bunch of red folks. When he was in the legislature, he joined our joint budget committee. He's been focusing on protecting para and growing retirement security for all Coloradans. Let's give a warm welcome to State Treasurer Dave Young.
Thanks, Morgan. Appreciate the invite, and really happy to be here this morning. It's fun to see all of my friends across the state, and big shout out to Jerry Shepard, my friend and neighbor up in Greeley, and it's an historic time. People keep talking about it, but I've been reflecting about what to say this morning, and the gravity of this situation just strikes me. It almost overwhelms me. My parents were young children. My dad actually an adolescent in the Great Depression, born at the end of World War I. He ended up serving in the military 3 times, finally in World War II. And in the course of the first 35 years of his life, there was the tail end of a pandemic. There was a financial crisis and a massive war against fascism and a tyrant that threatened the very existence of the world. That was a span of 35 years. So the parallels to today are similar, except we face all of this happening in 4 years. Not in 35 years. And I know it is overwhelming to think about it, but I think back to the way my parents and their generation approached this. And the one thing that they knew for certain, particularly in these challenges, was that they had to bind together in order to defeat a common enemy. And make no mistake about it, Donald Trump is the enemy of truth. He is the enemy of our democracy. He consorts with our enemies and must be defeated. Absolutely must be defeated. And so we must unite in an effort to do that. My parents realized that there were a lot of things that needed to be done policy-wise, practically, in order to recover from all of the events that they lived through. But they also knew that if they didn't bind together and defeat the enemy, that they, in fact, would never have a chance to recover. And we're at that point right now where we must get Donald Trump out of the White House. We've got to get Mitch McConnell out of a leadership position by flipping that Senate. And we cannot have anybody in a leadership position in the Senate who thinks bankruptcy is a good alternative for states. That's not only crazy, it's unconstitutional. And so we've got a huge challenge, and really it is, when people talk about it being unprecedented, it truly is unprecedented, because we've faced similar things, but never in such a compressed timeline. and our existential issues like climate change and this plantation mentality that's overlaid our country for 400 years are certainly policy and life issues that we have to take on in a full-throated way. But we're not going to be able to do that with a Trump White House for 4 more years and a Senate that just blocks everything that we know is good policy. So I thank you for your commitment to our party. Morgan, Halisi, and everyone, thank you so much for working so diligently to build the structure so that we are in a position to push these policies forward in our state. I appreciate all the support I got from all of you as we campaigned in 2018, and we are thankful for that support, and we're acting on those things in the Treasury. Economic justice is going to be a huge policy push for what we do in the Treasury going forward. And I stand ready to work with you on any and every policy decision that improves the financial health of people, families, and this state as we get past a win in November. I'm not assuming we will have one, so I'm fighting for it, but I'm planning to be there with you so that we can enact a lot of great policy here in the state of Colorado and in our country to really move our country forward. So thank you for the time. I know I kind of shoehorned in a little bit, Morgan, but really, really excited to see all of you and really thank you for your efforts. Let's go, let's fight, let's win.
Wonderful. Hey, Dave, thank you so much for joining us. I think we have time for one quick question. Asking whether you're campaigning for the on the Gallagher amendment this election. Do you have any quick thoughts on that?
Well, I'm campaigning for removing not only Gallagher, but also Tabor from our Colorado Constitution. It's not just Gallagher, it's Tabor that's creating a massive problem for us in a fiscal way, budget to spending, really funding the essential services that we know we need. And so, yes, I fully support that. I will say that there are concerns that I hear from people about what our tax policy will be if we remove it from our Colorado Constitution. And again, that's one of those conversations that I think we all need to come together and say, well, what is it? What is it going to look like? What is our tax policy going to look like if it isn't controlled by these very horrible amendments that are in our Constitution? Now, I know Dennis Gallagher is I'm probably going to get an email from Dennis saying, well, it's my amendment. And it's not horrible, but it's horrible when it's in there along with Tabor. And so we've got to resolve that and figure that out. But I do think that voters are going to want to know what's going to happen. And I think about people on fixed incomes. I mean, the reason the Gallagher Amendment went into the Colorado Constitution was because in the late 70s and early 80s, we had exploding residential property tax. And so there are going to be people that are going to be asking, what's going to happen with my property tax if that amendment is not in there? I know it's terrible and it doesn't work well with Tabor, but if it's gone, what happens? And so I think there are answers to that. I think that people that in the legislature who referred this measure to the ballot understand the challenges and have answers to those, but we've got to get those answers out to people so that they have clarity about what will be once Gallagher and hopefully in the future Tabor is removed from our Colorado Constitution.
Yeah, and I know it's a bummer that we didn't get the signatures on for getting a progressive graduated income tax rate in Colorado. We'll have to stay at it. Unfortunately, the Independence Institute did get on enough signatures to do an across-the-board regressive tax cut for the state. So stay tuned for more fiscal policy. Colorado really needs a lot of help here. Treasurer, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Morgan. And you're really right. You're really right on that. If 306 passes, along with all the other budget cuts the JBC is going to have to make, K-12 education is going to be devastating. Higher ed's already at the bottom of the funding for the country. I don't know where you go. You can't fall off the floor, but maybe they will. I don't know. It's terrible.
It's terrible. So stay tuned for ballot issues coming up. The Central Committee, thank you so much, Treasurer. The Central Committee has already taken a vote on a couple of the ballot measures. There are a couple others that we may, if you're on the Central Committee of the Colorado Democratic Party, that we will bring up to get ability to take an official position for or against some other critical issues that may be on the ballot. Again, a reminder, folks can look up your own slate, and you can help give voters the information they need to look up the candidates running in their district at coloradodems.org/ballot. And I think in response to a question Giselle had asked yesterday, we did send out an email with some information on why your vote is safe in Colorado. And I think it was a great question and ability to keep people informed there. We've got a couple different announcements for this morning. I'm going to turn it over to Halisi and David, and then we have a special guest. So stay tuned with us. I hope we've kept it as